My name is Monica DeSalvo. I'm ecstatic to be part of 8 Visions this year. And the work I'm showing, I'm going to consider them duets with my work and some of the memorabilia from my late father, who I took care of from his age 83 to 90. He was an engineer, I'm a graphic designer, so part of that duet, this collaboration includes both of our professions. But I wanted to talk a little bit about process and inspiration. The seed for this body of work kind of started with these little collages on discarded bits of mat board that I call them my sticks. And they're quite beautiful. They just are remnants of monoprints and mixed media things that I had done over the last 2 years before I start doing them. And I was in a workshop and just creating things all the time. I made them, brought them into my workshop, and friends started playing around with them and arranging them, and I had different ideas about them and tried to make them into a book that didn't work. My mentor suggested blowing them up big, and that's really how my whole body of work started. So I went from little things to really big things. The big things became collage bases, and I made several. What I was really fascinated with was how the color and the texture with the enlargements just like burst apart. And then looking for pieces to collage with, like a patch of lavender or a bowl of spaghetti, something actual could actually just blend right into these amorphous swaths of color and texture. And I got really excited about that. During this time, I was taking care of my father, declining health, increasing dementia, and dementia is not just about memory loss. He had hallucinations that were pretty psychedelic, and so some of the things that he was experiencing, that the storytelling, the narratives, the psychedelic colors, I'm trying to weave that into the work. After he was an aeronautics engineer, after he died, I got his pile of paper. He also loved paper as much as me. He kept everything. So I have notes from engineering courses, journals, his professional engineering papers, lots of coursework, a lot of handwritten items. And I'm taking those, their typography, and that's part of what I do for a living, but I'm weaving those into the work. So they've become these duets that for me they're like, it's an unending source of inspiration, not just with the physical things, but the things he said. And with his dementia, he couldn't find everyday words to describe everyday things. Whether he was talking about what he did that day or how he was feeling or something that happened, he couldn't find the words, and so he came out with these really fantastical, amazing couplets of words, and those inspire me, and those are the titles for some of these pieces, such as, he said, "Monica, this is a leaky place." I'm still trying to figure out what it really means, but I think that the things he said described his experiences more than if he had found just regular words. That is the gist of my work.
My name is Craig Elliott. I do charcoal drawings, and I use this limited palette of black and white in order to force myself to invent new forms and textures and patterns and shapes rather than rely on the power of color. My process is I start with a blank sheet of paper and a piece of charcoal. Then I clear my mind of all things negative. And then I fill my thought with all things positive, like gratitude. And just a good positive thought. Then I close my eyes and I start drawing, and I live in the spontaneity of the moment. I just draw and draw until it feels right to stop, and usually about 2 minutes. Then I open my eyes and I see what I've got. And there's always some kind of beautiful line or series of curves. And then I develop the different areas so they start to have a dialogue with each other. And at this point, it's a complete surprise to me what I've come up with. It's sort of like a giant calligraphic squiggle. And so as I shape these different areas, darken in some and erase out others, this dialogue appears, and I develop it and add patterns and textures and complex shapes or combined shapes to come up with a dynamic composition. And as soon as I can't add any more without weakening it, it's finished. Then at that point, the square format gives me the opportunity to look at it from 4 different orientations. And so it's like a different drawing with each rotation. So, and each one is a surprise to me, which is what I'm really looking for. I don't want to feel like I've calculated something or I've invented or designed something. I want to actually be surprised by my own work. And so when it's finished, I get people to tell me what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what thoughts they have about it. And they give me memories or what it looks like, and they sort of give something back to me, and there's sort of a dialogue there between the viewer and the piece. And I consider that a form of gratitude that they're giving to the piece. And so my process begins and ends with gratitude. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lindsey Epstein. I am a potter from Tiverton, Rhode Island, and I grow crystals on porcelain. This is one of the pieces that I made, and these are zinc crystals that grow on the piece during the firing process. It has to do with the chemistry of the glaze and how I fire the piece that I can get the crystals to grow. I don't place the crystals anywhere in particular on the vase. It all really just has to do with the magic of the firing and the science that I get the crystals to grow. And the temperature is held and heated up at certain different points, and that's really what creates these different rings that you can see around the crystals, kind of like the rings on a tree. And every time I make one of those changes in the kiln, that's really what grows the crystals. The big theme in my work is growth. Growing the crystals. I'm very much into flowers and plants and growing plants and the care that goes into taking care of those plants. So whether I'm growing the crystals on the piece, growing the form from a lump of clay, or creating flowers from clay, or growing real flowers, everything that I do is about growth.
So my name is Virginia Mahoney. Live and work in Brockton, Massachusetts, and I'm really thrilled to be included in 8 Visions this year. So the work that I'm showing in 8 Visions is a series that I call the Shield series that developed over the last couple of years, sort of as a result of seeing a lot of images of people with things on their faces and masks, face coverings, masks, protective gear, which then evolved to looking very carefully at the kinds of things that people were carrying in the protests, and also ultimately in January 6th riot on the Capitol. And I just was I couldn't get those images out of my mind of people either covering their faces, covering parts of their faces, and holding up shields, and it just became this kind of thing that I couldn't stop thinking about. So Having always worked with garments, garment forms, I should say, not garments themselves, but garment forms, previously a vest form, which I worked with for quite a while, and then also a dicky form, which is like a sort of a half of a shirt. And I just developed this shield series, and I have a piece right here which you can see part of, but what you'll notice is you can see my hand through the body area. The body areas are transparent, and the head area is very opaque. And all over the head area there are words embroidered that relate to the title. So this piece is called Stifle, and the posture of the piece is sort of stifled. The arms are tucked behind, and it's kind of rigid looking. And the issues that I'm talking about, or that I'm thinking about with these works, are all very contemporary issues related to what's going on in the world right now, and particularly inequity and other issues like that are kind of not just related to necessarily racism, but also related to inequities that exist amongst classes and people with disabilities, people with issues that there's just a lot of inequity. So having said that, that's just one of the issues, but those are the kinds of things that these pieces address. So having said all that, I will say that the process of making them often influences how they come out. It's not a beginning like, okay, I'm going to make this, and I make it. I might say I'm going to make this, and this becomes that. And so the process is very important in how the piece evolves. And I use mostly reclaimed fabrics and vegetable net or food netting and things like that. So anyway, I really hope that you get to see all these pieces, and I'm going to be excited to see all 8 of them together. And 3 new pieces since I actually showed 5 of them a couple months ago at Fountain Street Gallery in Boston. But I'm very excited about this, and I want to thank MIM and also the Attleboro Arts Museum for including me this year. Thank you very much.
We're in Kat Macella's studio, and I have to ask Kat a question for the Attleboro Arts Museum. Kat, what drives you to paint?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking. Essentially, I paint in hopes of bringing feel-good moments to people. I'm not going to bore you with childhood development and art that I think we all had. I probably had done more art than the average kid, though, as my mom worked nights, slept days, and that was the quiet activity to keep me safe in our Hartford, Connecticut apartment. But I learned as a little girl growing up there that art could elicit a smile, and not just from my mom, but also my daily drawings. I give to others in our apartment building and watch their face light up, and they're struggling as well just to make ends meet. And so now come full circle after a somewhat bohemian non-linear art education. My daily sketches, they inform my work. I put them, file them way up there, and they'll just pop up, surprise me. I typically don't look at my sketches, I just paint, and spontaneous marks are the beginning, and then intuition and then analysis and problem solving kick in eventually. So my body of work currently at the Attleboro Arts Museum consists of layers of transparent and opaque oil paint, but mixed with marble dust sometimes, wax, recycled stuff. And the work is all about empathy for the human experience, fragility of life, and the love that often prevails. And I just feel deep gratitude for art has helped me through a lot of hard times, and now I get to give back and work in this 750 square foot messy yurt. And it's a little hot today, see the temperature, but it's larger than my childhood apartment. It's just my hope that people will view the work and feel fully alive, whether it's via the colors, the textures, or basic energy just moving through the pictorial space. And I hope they walk away and say, yeah, life's worth living, or yeah, life can be fun. I don't want them to think the opposite. So that's my answer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
My name is Alexander Morris. For me, when I'm beginning to work on the process, I enjoy making my own paint. And for me, mixing up colors for hours is exciting. It creates a connection between painting and artist, which is so much more symbiotic. That's important considering the spiritual and naturalistic quality which is at the core of my work. I find my process is a confluence between the tangible and the intangible, between presence and absence. The tangible being me, the painted surface, my medium, the natural world, the intangible being my spirituality, the veil between this life, the one before, and the one after. Those things I can't express in words. Concurrently with mixing paint, I also make the initial marks on the painting. These are automatic, chaotic even. I react to those initial experiences, forming bonds between texture and line. I build up layers of these memories across the painted surface, obliterating and reiterating, interchanging between very wet and very dry paint and mediums. This creates history, and a history that's unique to each painting. I also find it infuses the work with an emotional charge. I have my own mythos and pathos, concepts and narratives that I keep mainly to myself, not wanting to influence the audience upon viewing the work. Suffice it to say, I am haunted by a series of symbiotic relationships I've observed in and around my life. These relationships are manifested through certain textures and line work interwoven across the picture plane. Regarding the textual component of my paintings, this stems from a love of ancient languages, indecipherable languages, old documents, manifests, land deeds even. I find them compositionally attractive. So much significance, so much sense of place and history, so much knowledge built up over generations goes to craft them. I use it as a link between the tangible and the intangible, like a legend on a map or a key that opens the door between two spaces. Creating a covenant and an undertone of unspoken understanding, which is the language that the Spirit uses to communicate. I invite my audience to listen to these subtle connections.
Hi, I'm Lisa Redburn. I'm a photographer, thrilled to be in the 8 Vision show. I chose to do triptychs for this show because it was an opportunity for me to weave my work together in new ways. The first triptych I ever made was a number of years ago. I had gotten captivated by a stream that had some very reflective scum on the top of it that had these exquisite reflections of the sky and trees. And I took so many images, I didn't know what to do with them. So I ended up making a triptych and discovered that it was richer, more intriguing, more lyrical than the individual image. I've since made a couple other triptychs, but they never sang in quite that way. For this show, I took a different approach. I went through my archives, finding images that I wanted to play with. It's a very intuitive and playful process for me. I choose an image and I look for friends or backup players or a percussion section, or maybe it's the lead singer that's missing. So I pick the one image and then I look for friends where the color, the form, the gesture, the feel might play off each other. And then I play. I move them around, I resize them, I crop them, I reject them. It's a very fluid process that's quite fun. I reject a lot, but when they start to harmonize, it gets really exciting. You know, maybe I won't change a lot to the images, but I might highlight a certain line or a part of one to go with another. The process to me, as I said, it's very exciting. It feels a lot like gardening, which was my first art form. I would fall in love with a plant in somebody else's garden, and then I'd try growing it, or I'd buy it, and I'd find a place for it, and find where would it want to integrate into my garden? How would it cross-pollinate, play off the others? And this process is very similar to that. Sometimes I look for colors or form. Obviously the circles here was part of the discussion, but it was more than that. It was also weaving together the warp and weft of my experience over time. Here I was on a little boat down on the water in the Okavango Delta in Africa, and here were leaves of a smoke bush that I had planted in my garden that I was looking at from two sides with light behind, and here the light was on it. So I called this one Both Sides Now. I decided when I named them to choose names of songs because they all do feel kind of lyrical to me. It's about that continuing conversation. And I'm just thrilled to be here in this show where the conversation will continue as my work interacts with that of the other artists' innate visions, and a new kind of cross-pollination will occur.
Hi, Chuck Tre Montana. I was really blessed to attend the Cleveland Institute of Art in Cleveland, Ohio, and my three favorite professors were nationally renowned artisans. There was Victor Schreckengust for product design, John Paul Miller for basic design, and Fred Miller for silversmithing. When I graduated, I was a silver designer for Reed & Barton Silver, and then went on to be the design director for Gorham Silver, in charge of their fine china, silver, and fine crystal division. It was a lot of product design, very much limited regarding marketing disciplines and certainly manufacturing disciplines. And so when I retired, I returned to my first love, which was working with precious metals. After I renewed my bench skills, then it was a question of what design direction to go, considering technique, abstractions, and whatnot. I did a lot of experimenting, and then developed the theme of Atlantis. I was always enthralled with the legendary theme of Atlantis. And when you stop to think that as recent as 20,000 years ago, the ocean was 400 feet lower than it is now, to me, it makes the whole legend plausible. So my first pieces in Atlantis incorporated cloisonné enameling, blue topaz stones, and I was developing the theme with abstract tropical fish. And then I incorporated fine silver. Fine silver allowed use of silver granulation and wonderful, very subtle textures, which I incorporated for the use to abstract the ebb and flow of tidal washes and such. Started to use semi-precious stones from around the world, from Russia, India, and China. One of the stones happened to be a 50 million year old ammonite shell that's incorporated with turquoise. How the creative mind envisions a design and then challenges the mind, the hand, and the eye to make that a reality, again, is something that's always fascinated me with a lifetime career in design and fabrication. Much as Michelangelo saw a sculpture within the marble and beckoned for it to release. I feel very much the same when I go to my studio and work with the raw materials. It will be very interesting to see how Atlantis continues to challenge my mind and my creativity, and watch the pieces evolve further over time. I'd like to see it in terms of eons, but I don't think that's going to happen. Thank you, ma'am.